Okay, sorry, we need to record, do we? Need to record. Yeah, we're good to go. Have a seat. Come on, you can sit at the front. It's okay. We don't. It's a. This is more like a fireside chat. It's a very intimate setting. So yeah, thank you all for joining us this evening for our chat on from legal advisor to power player, the GC's roadmap for 2025. As you can tell, our marketing team got very creative with the title there. I'm sure everyone up here would consider themselves a power player. So why are we laughing? So the recording didn't get my great joke. That's all. That's the only joke that I had. Fantastic. I'll have to do it again. You have to laugh again. So yeah, my name is Emmanuel or Manny Giuffre. I head up the legal team here at LegalVision. I'm also the general manager. Yeah, so it's an absolute pleasure to be your host this evening. Before we start, I'd love to pay our respects and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So tonight we're so fortunate to be joined by three outstanding, in-house counsel and leaders of in-house legal teams. So we're joined by Sashi Fernando, General Counsel at VidaCorp, Reggie Leones, who's the head of legal at the Children's Medical Research Institute, and also Lauren Milner, who's the head of legal Australia New Zealand, the long title, Asia Pacific Aviation Acting at Goodyear. A fun fact, so I've worked with Sashi for 6 years. We started working when Sashi was the head of legal at Philips. Worked with Lauren, first started working with Lauren 15 years ago when Lauren was, maybe 16 years ago, when Lauren was head of legal at British American Tobacco. And I've known Reg for about 150 years because we went to uni together. So Reg wins in that stake. But look, would love just to start off for each of you just to spend a minute just telling our audience a little bit about yourself and your career.
So I started at Maddox in a graduate position with some of the great team here. I think Ali and Joe as well, or Maddox alumni. And after about 5 years at Maddox, I moved on to Philips. And through the ranks through Philips into the GC role, I spent about nearly 11 years at Philips. I loved Philips. It was a fantastic role. And then moved into this new company, VidaCorp. We're an Australian-based company owned by one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Australia. They have recently acquired a number of cosmetic brands, Australian-based cosmetic brands, and they are going global. So I wanted to really put some hours into an Australian company and grow an Australian business. And so with my understanding and knowledge of the multinational sector, I wanted to have that experience as well. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Manny.
Thanks, Ash. Reg?
Hi everyone, I'm Reg. I guess I started off as a grad at Freehills, now HSF, primarily working in their IP space. So I trained up as a patent attorney and then also spent a lot of time doing patent litigation. And after a number of years, an opportunity came up to go in-house at Children's Medical Research Institute, or CMRI for short. And yeah, I thought it was a great opportunity to work at a place that is doing pediatrics research. So all my internal stakeholders are primarily the scientists and then the professional support staff. And given the science background that I have, I thought it would be, somewhere I could really sort of put the science and the legal training together. So yeah, I've been there for just over 4 years. I started off as their IP, dedicated IP counsel, and then last year took up the GC role.
So for those that don't know, CMRI is also the company behind Genes for Genes. So I'm sure you'll be giving that a plug as well. And Lauren?
I started in private equity M&A at Norton Rose and Baker and McKenzie, and thoroughly enjoyed that work, but not so much the long hours that came with it, and was offered the opportunity to go on secondment to British American Tobacco, which was supposed to be 3 weeks, just giving them a helping hand. Turned into about 5.5 years. I absolutely loved being in-house. I loved the challenge. I loved being at the coalface where you're actually there before the decisions are made, so you can shape and influence. And BAT had lots of challenges, from creating a whole new company to do manufacturing, building a whole new facility, plain packaging came in. So we sort of went through all the highs of growing and expanding to then starting to reduce and ultimately selling to Meriton and seeing the destruction of the factory that worked so hard to achieve. And then
After
after
only
that,
a couple of years too,
Yes,
maybe less.
yes, yeah. So it was sort of a full life cycle into a small couple of years. And then on to Sydney Buses, where I was head of legal. And that was ultimately privatised. So I haven't had a great track record there.
It had nothing to do with you.
No,
so-
no, it didn't. It didn't. And now at Goodyear.
Yeah.
Hopefully the jinx doesn't continue.
Great. Okay, cool. So thank you so much. So yeah, tonight our expert panel is going to be walking through some of the sort of key challenges that in-house counsel GCs are facing in 2025. And we're providing some tips, tricks, really practical takeaways that hopefully you guys can take back into your working life. So before we begin, keen to just have a quick show of hands. Who here who's currently working in-house would agree with the statement that the role of the in-house lawyer has significantly changed in 2025 or even in recent years? You can all put your hands up. Yeah. So who here thinks that the role of in-house counsel has changed? Don't be shy. I'm going to put my hand up. I mean, I think it's obvious, right? The role of in-house counsel has significantly changed. I would say that the role of just being a lawyer is evolving really rapidly. So it's not even just in-house counsel. It's the role of a lawyer. So I suppose just handing over firstly, I'd love to hear from all three of you on this question. But we've seen the emergence of new technologies like AI. Increased pressures from the business for legal to be able to demonstrate its value and also to do increasingly more with a lot less in the current economic climate, and also in navigating an increasingly complex regulatory landscape. So hearing from, I suppose, Sashi, you can kick us off. What do you reckon is the number one biggest challenge facing in-house counsel in 2025?
I mean, I think, I'm sure all of you have gone through it. If you look back at 6 years ago or 7 years ago when we were practicing, we were just talking about privacy policies. We just started talking about, if you remember, we were like, I don't know what that really even means. We hadn't heard of really GDPR. We weren't talking about modern slavery. We weren't talking about, cyber. And so we've changed so much in our policies and requirements, and with that, the expectation of the board. I think the board has also really grown as commercial leaders and what they expect from the legal team. So I feel like from my point of view, it's no longer a situation where contractual review is what we do. That's just so baseline. That is what is expected as a base level. That is not the stretch target. The stretch target has really moved on us as a department. And I think that's also should be seen as a real opportunity for the legal function. The legal function is really now, standing right next to the other functions, whether it's finance or HR. And I think that's a great driver for us as a group of legal leaders, because that really is the opportunity to talk and address about a lot of things, including things that otherwise might not have been sitting at board level. So, I think it's a good thing, but it's asking a lot more of us.
Yeah. Reg, do you agree?
Absolutely. So stepping into the GC role from earlier last year, there's definitely a steep learning curve in terms of so many more things that I'm involved with, which, as you said, provides a great opportunity to actually be that sort of change agent, I suppose. And given so much change is happening, regulatory, political, there's just so much pressure to sort of keep your eyes and ears open as to what's going on out there, and then not being able to report it into the business, but also work with all the other business stakeholders as well.
People talk often, before we go over to you, Lauren, people often talk about the importance of, obviously, IQ is something that's a given with, lawyers. You need to have, the smarts about you. EQ was really a thing that people were talking about, particularly from a management perspective and a stakeholder management perspective. But now it feels like with change being just a constant, something we need to adapt to, AQ is becoming the thing that also is going to define the next generation of GC, your adaptability quotient. Lauren, what do you think? Oh, not about that in particular, but the original question.
Well, I definitely agree with the view expressed by my peers. I think on top of that as well, GCs are now often or predominantly sitting on the executive.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of the legal department being sort of a separate department. We're now there making the decisions with the fellow heads of function. So I think that has brought about a big change to the General Counsel role. I think it's a positive change because I think we should be there to ensure that the correct decisions are being made instead of being involved later on where you're trying to then change
Yes.
the direction of the decision. So I think that that's brought about significant change and really elevated the role of the General Counsel and its significance and importance, particularly for listed companies as well. Often you'll see the General Counsel will also be the company secretary, so they're in all the board meetings. So I think that that has also contributed to the changes that we've seen.
Yeah. So I suppose to summarize, it would be that change is the constant, that we're being integrated in so many different aspects, basically all of the aspects of the business, and expected to be a trusted commercial strategic advisor as well as advising on legal risk. On top of that, we still have to do all the contracts because that's a given. And also we need to be on top of all of sort of the complexities of this new regulatory landscape. So yeah, I mean, it feels like, it feels like a lot. But I suppose I'm going a little bit off script here. You're expected to do a lot more, but is it fair to say that you're supposed to do it also in the context of there being less resources at your disposal in order to do it? Would you agree with that? And I suppose, what is your experience on that? Yeah, Lauren, do you want to continue? Sorry, that's my job, isn't it?
Yeah, I think budgets are definitely tightening through a lot of companies, and legal functions have had to reduce headcount. So, I mean, at buses, for example, I had 3 executive assistants. At Goodyear, I don't have any executive assistant type support, and I think with a lot of legal teams, we've had to be much leaner, and that means we've got to be more efficient. We've got to look to how can we operationally achieve more efficiency. So that's looking at things like how good are our templates? You know, can we ensure that we're using those rather than every single time the business is wanting to bring on board a new customer or a new supplier, starting from scratch. It's looking at what are our processes and how can we streamline things so that the business can be a little bit more self-sufficient as well, so that the legal work is more where it's needed and not with things that really the business should be able to self-serve. So I think it's working out your priorities and making sure that the business is as efficiently run as it can be.
Reg, do you have anything you want to say to that?
The importance of getting those processes in place has definitely helped. So rather than always getting that email about just simple contract management sort of questions, having the systems there so people can look them up themselves. And I try to, for the lower level, low risk stuff, try to educate the business managers when we do a piece of advice or a contract review. That way they're sort of skilling up along the way as well. Yeah. So I think that's important.
And before we move on to the next question, how important do you think, I mean, you've talked about systems and process improvements, how important do you think the role of tech is in driving efficiencies? Maybe you, Sash?
Absolutely, because like to everyone's point, I think the contractual contract management is, as I said before, so it has to really be streamlined. It just has to be the baseline, because we are expected to step into a really strategic role of risk management, and risk management isn't necessarily always in the contract review. Sometimes it is, but having the tools in place to do the contract review as fast as possible, to deep dive in there and manage that risk as quickly as possible. And, you know, we've got a lot of support from LV on that front, such as playbooks and templates are so important, because that elevates your ability to have the capacity to look at real strategic risk management. And if you're not at that level, you cannot, you literally do not have enough hours in the day
Yeah.
to be in the right place with the right team, with, you know, talking to the right management. The decision's already made, and like to Lauren's point, you are chasing that decision. So and it's really difficult to do because there's only so many hours, right?
Totally.
And you want to go home and have a nap.
Yeah. And you watch White
Yeah,
Lotus.
that's
which
right, and
is
watch
currently
Netflix.
being recorded on IQ. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and so I think like really kind of leaning into what tools are available to us,
Yeah.
and again now leaning into what like potential tech tools are available to us. It's not comfortable
Yeah.
for lawyers. It's definitely not for me,
Yeah.
but I think we have to.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about AI in a moment. I suppose just changing topic a little bit, and we're looking now at how you're able to demonstrate business value. I mean, I think it's never been more important for in-house legal teams to be demonstrating value. But also there is this constant tension, we hear it all the time, about the in-house legal team not just being the Department of No, but being the Department of Go, 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 go. You know, or at least being an enabler of business growth. So, you know, keen to hear how you balance that tension between, you know, prudence, you know, being legally, you know, responsible and prudent, but also not being a handbrake on business growth. Lauren?
That is really important, particularly if a business is you know, restructuring or looking at headcounts, is showing your worth, and often the legal function is looked at as a cost rather than a benefit, because on the financials we're not bringing in any income.
Yeah.
So there's always that constant stress that sort of within the business is, you know, how's legal going to demonstrate their worth? And the way that I respond to that is all the savings that we bring, because we are reducing risk every day. That has a huge financial benefit. It's things like making sure before we launch a new business that we have got a trademark, that we're not infringing someone else's trademark. You know, it captures all aspects of the business, making sure we're not giving open-ended indemnities. You know, making sure when it comes to leases, you know, that we're not overdoing, you know, make good obligations, for example.
How do you educate the business that those things are important? Do you need to get sued first and then say, see, I told you it was important? Like, how do you actually demonstrate that sort of thing, indemnities and, you know, make goods are important?
Well, I think all businesses have had learnings, you know, from before
Yeah.
before we joined, and it's sort of reminding them of the war stories, or from other competitors in the industry. So if a competitor has been sued, for example, pointing out, hey, this is what they did wrong, and this is the steps that the legal function here has taken to ensure that that issue won't arise here.
Yeah.
So it's keeping an eye on what else is happening as well, to reference the good job being done internally.
Yeah. Reg, how would you answer the question of, you know, demonstrating value and not being a handbrake?
Yeah, so I think just building on Lauren's last point, I think the way I've approached it is just sort of understanding exactly what is driving the business, or what is the values of the business, and how the core legal functions sort of really align or can enable or boost those drivers. So I guess in my capacity as a research institute, almost everything we do involves collaboration, whether that be with industry or other academic or not-for-profit organizations. And with that comes not just governance on our side, but governance on the other side. So yeah, our researchers can almost do nothing by themselves. So we kind of are seen as an enabler in that respect. Sometimes we are seen as a bit of a no, but it's more of a not right now until we, you know, get all the ducks in a row.
It's not no,
Yeah,
but it's no right now. I like that. And
not straight away.
Yeah,
but
not straight away. And so when you're looking at aligning what you're doing, so aligning the legal team with business's objectives, are you also having a look at, okay, well, what is the risk appetite of the business and what is their commercial and legal risk profile?
Yeah. So for example, when we've had, you know, really tough negotiations over sort of IP licensing, or sort of just looking at like, what is the strategy behind this? Like, you know, does the IP need to go to this particular partner? Is it best used in this case? You know, because our key motivator is to do good research, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily equate to an exclusive license if no one else out there can benefit from it.
Yeah.
So it's really just managing those
And-
tensions.
And you've been in the role for a while now, but it's not that longer that that you joined. Was that something that you had to do when you entered the business in identifying, like making sure that you fully understood what the business's position was and their risk appetite was? Did you go about and seek to do that as soon as you joined, or did you learn sort of
it-
on the job?
Sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
bit of both. Yeah,
Yeah.
sort of had to learn on the job, seeing sort of what contracts were already in place, but then also getting feel for exactly who were the key decision makers in
Yeah.
the business, whether that be head researchers, whether that be the business staff, and just getting an appetite or a feel for how they operated.
Yeah.
But I think being in-house, that's your day-to-day, so you
Yeah.
really get a feel for that.
Yeah, great. Sashi, what do you reckon?
I think agree with the panel. Absolutely. There's a real like agility that we play as to the line that we're walking. How do we say no but also say yes? And I know you've probably all been in that room. I think through, and I keep reminding myself though, the role that we play is a specific role, and we're hired for a specific role as risk managers and risk mitigators. And it's not always fun being the person in the room. There's 10 other people, and you're the one person saying, yeah, but no, but what about this? And they're all like, let's ready to go, let's sign tomorrow. And you're like, no,
And it's
I
fun to-
don't think that's.
It's fun to argue with the lawyer as well. When
yeah.
you've got a whole bunch of commercial
Yeah.
people, they're like,
And
yeah,
you're
let's
like,
argue with it.
no, I don't know, guys. What have we done? But I do think that we also need to lean into, and especially right now, like there's lots of startups, there's lots of lots of real kind of positivity of us, of the legal function being really involved in this decision making process. But sometimes it's okay to be the one person in a room of 10 saying no, because that's your job. And that doesn't mean that the decision isn't made. It just means the decision's made knowing all the options, knowing the consequences, knowing whether risk mitigation has been put in place. And so for me, I think really like putting our view on the table is really quite important, even if it's not always followed.
Yeah.
But that's the role.
And you're a very experienced lawyer. What would be your advice to more junior in-house counsel or more junior GC just stepping into the role? Maybe they've just joined a new business. How do you say no tactfully? How do you sort of because it's not always easy being
No.
the lone no in the room.
No, and I think it really helps if you've been there for a while, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the key thing, isn't it? Like if you've been there for a while and you're the last person standing, like you're the furniture, like they're just gonna be like, fine, like whatever you say. But but I think if you're new, definitely that's different. I'm in a new role. I've been in the role for nearly 11 months, and I think like you really need to figure out your power players. Who are the power players that are going to support you? You're going to have compliance functions that will probably always support you, and really taking the time in the first couple of months to build those relationships with your power players, because around that room of 10, you need to know who's going to be backing you. It's a very strategic approach, but that's kind of like how you have to play it, and be really clear on. But end of the day, it's the most important. Like your client is your company. And so you're putting yourself in a position where the client's making the best decision possible.
Yeah.
And I think it's sometimes like it's really hard to, with all the players and the personalities, it's hard to not get drawn down that journey.
Yeah. How did you build those relationships? I'm just interested. Like when you've identified your power players, you're a power player, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's on the lid. Yeah.
It's saying
So yeah,
on the
so it
screen.
takes a power player to identify a power player.
I
Yeah.
love it.
I get it. So you've identified the key brokers, power players.
Yeah.
So how did you go about developing those relationships?
Yeah. So I have a marketing degree.
Very good.
I worked in marketing for 4 years.
Yeah.
But I think end of the day, it's just honestly, it's just about like being kind to people
Yeah.
and building a relationship. Like,
Yeah.
how many kids have you got? Like, where do you live? Like, what do you do? But like, end of the day, it's just about going out for a drink. Like, I really like calling people on the phone, and I know it shows my age, but like, I find that really important. Like, it's about building those relationships of trust. And when you're in the boardroom, if they don't trust you, you know, they're going to be like, yeah, but why would I do that? Like,
Yeah.
why would I do that and stop all this
Yeah.
stuff because you tell me that's a good idea?
Yeah.
So like I'm old school like that. I
Yeah.
really feel the just you know, going out for a drink or having a coffee or whatever. Those things are really important. The kitchen, like talking around the, you know, kitchen water, like
Yeah. So
that
those
all
soft
adds
skills.
up.
Yeah.
Really does.
It's like if they know that you're coming from a good place, you can pretty much tell them anything. Yeah, well, almost. Okay, so I wanted to delve into some of the sort of items that came up you know, initially when we were talking about the challenges the GCs are facing. One of the ones that I think both of you were saying, we're talking about just operating in a more complex regulatory environment. I wanted to hear from you, Reg, because CMRI, I mean, obviously medical regulatory is it's a web of complexity. On top of that, you're operating in a not-for-profit. Yeah, so how do you keep on top of regulatory change, and what are sort of the strategies that you deploy to, you know, sort of address compliance at an organizational level? Sorry, was that really wordy?
The keeping on top of piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've never been more appreciative of CLE days or seminar. And yeah, newfound appreciation for those business development articles we were all forced to write as grads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apart from that, I think I've been fortunate in that I've sort of came into the role at the right time because we've been developing and implementing a risk management sort of matrix.
Yep.
So yeah, it's been a journey for the organization, but at least now we're actually really mapping out sort of our key risk areas in all the business units and the research teams as well. So just having that visibility just to begin with, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, actually having each of the business leaders sort of really think about their space, where they're operating, and having that visibility, and then sort of tracking through that and having a clear line of sight as to responsibilities and things like that.
It's interesting because it's not something that they teach you in law school, like how to apply a risk matrix.
Yeah.
And it's not something, even if you've got traditional law background, it's not something that you will have had to have helped your client with. So yeah,
it's not something I thought of.
Do you want to just provide some insights as to how you went about that?
Yeah, so I guess each of the business leaders were sort of tasked with like looking at their operational responsibilities, looking at from a regulatory and a compliance perspective as well, like what do we need to hit for each of these? What do we have already? What we don't have? Do we need to develop something? So that's all now at least on a page, and we can start working through that. And then it's also in our system as well. So we've got alerts to like review this on a periodic basis. Like, has it been developed yet? If not, why not? If it has been developed, are we tracking it? So that's good.
Yeah.
At least it sort of takes the constant stress that, you know, we should be doing something.
And the terror that you're finding,
yeah.
it's like, oh God, all this law that I need to know, and all these risks,
and
that it's
at
all
the
on my
same
shoulders.
as going to Sashi's point as well, I've really learnt a lot from the other business leaders, because they are in some way, in a lot of ways, their own subject matter experts as well. Like, yeah, so we're sort of working with them like in tandem, rather than sort of just trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah. And just finally on this point, how important is it when you're developing a risk assessment matrix like that all roads don't lead to legal?
Yes, well,
because it
yeah,
could.
I've definitely, yeah. As I said, I'm lucky that each of the business unit leaders sort of have, you know, oversight of that, and also can delegate within their team as well.
Yeah.
So in some ways, all roads do go back to somewhat legal and the COO, who's sort of in charge of all of governance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sort of giving them the comfort that you're there for support, but they're not just sort of feeding everything back to you.
Yeah. Lauren, at the beginning of our chat, we were talking about all the hats that you know, in-house counsel now need to wear. And one thing that came to mind was, okay, well, if you're taking on a more strategic role, or you're taking on a more commercial role, that could lead to a conflict with your professional or ethical duties, or your duty to the courts, for example. But there are probably other things that GPs need to think about when they're wearing multiple hats. Did you want to give your views on that?
I've had multiple hats in a few roles. So when I was at British American Tobacco, I was company director, company secretary, head of legal, external comms, and records management. That last one, I don't know how that even got thrown in. And
If privacy was a thing, you would have been the privacy officer.
yeah. That's what I am at Goodyear.
Yeah, see?
And I think when you speak to general counsels, most have now got a second hat, whether it is privacy, whether it's head of risk, whether it's head of compliance, whether it's COSEC. And sometimes it can be something obscure like HR or IT. But a lot of us are just juggling.
It is true, though.
It
Yeah,
is.
I've seen
I
it
got
too.
asked to be head of IT at buses, and if anyone has seen my IT skills, you would know that is not a great idea. It's not. And it just means that not only do you need the legal skill set, but you obviously need the skill set that's required to run that additional role. And it does bring in conflicts. And so when I was at BAT, I actually had an external law firm draft up a protocol for me so that I had clear guidelines that were objective and independently done on how to manage, particularly the director, the head of legal, and the COSEC, being really very different roles. And the reason I was asked to be a director was because we had a board that hadn't had a lot of governance experience. So they wanted to make sure that I was on the board to ensure that everything was done correctly and the decision making was done appropriately. And our shareholder was in the Netherlands, so they weren't on the ground. But that protocol meant that I had to be careful, even in sending an email. Was I sending the email as a general counsel? Was I sending the email as the company secretary? Was I sending it as the director? So I was literally having to change my signature for emails so that it was clear in what capacity I was doing work. And that's particularly important for privilege, because there's no privilege if I'm acting in my capacity as a director. But there is, there may be if it's dominant purpose and so forth, if I'm a general counsel. So it was having those clear guidelines that meant that I was able to function appropriately with my varying hats.
And did you have to also be really clear in the protocols of when you're entering into a meeting room as well,
Yeah.
which capacity you're in?
Yes.
Did you
yeah.
have a physical hat?
I changed my shoes.
Lovely shoes. They're lovely shoes.
Thanks, mate.
So what capacity you're in today? Is this privacy officer shoes? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to add here? Because we all have to wear, well, you all have to wear different hats. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Like maybe the other hat that like I love to wear, nobody hands it to me, but I like take it, is I just feel like also reminding people that just be nice to each other. Like, like as as head of legal, any role really in legal, like we're also kind of like integrity officers by just the fact that you're there. I'm sure you guys feel it. You're like at dinner and they're all like, oh, the lawyer's here, can't say that. I'm sure you get that joke all the time. But I think it's actually kind of an important role because it's an integrity-based role where you're like, that's not appropriate. It's okay. It's not really okay to say that. And I kind of get that hat and I make sure it's on because I think it's important. And especially in really fast-moving, fast-growing companies, it's just moving so fast that there's no they haven't yet put the whole structure together yet.
Yeah.
For that, and just kind of grab the hat that you think you might need to wear.
Yeah. Sashi, keen to pick up on something that you mentioned at the beginning. I mean, this is more about sort of the your roles at Philips, where you're working in a multinational organisation and taking directives from the mothership, so to speak, in the Australian legal team. Now you're working for an Australian business that is expanding, overseas. I'm interested in how you sort of navigate the tension or how you balance, local priorities and the need with global directives or operating within a larger sort of global business.
Yeah. So at Philips, there was there's still 70,000 people, even though they've had a lot of restructure. And the Australian entity reported into Singapore, which then reported into the Netherlands, as you'd expect. So when I started at Philips, I was like 30, it was like 2013. It was a long time ago, and the definitely, in the first initial years, I was taking a lot of directive from global, but I think you really have to walk yourself to a point where you're really conscious of your client. Your client is the Australian client, and it's really important to be giving the advice that's important for the Australian client. But that's also the play, I guess, is that you are the eyes on the ground from a legal context for the larger corporate body to the mothership, and it's sometimes you just have to call it like, no, this is the law in Australia, from say, especially from an Australian consumer law point of view. It's very different to the other you'll find the other jurisdictions, and the rights that the Australian consumers have are very different and almost unheard of in other jurisdictions, and so that has to be your priority of feeding it up the chain. So I think you get to the tipping point when you're really, in some ways, directing above country to say, no, this is what we need. This is the structure that we need. We might need more lawyers because, and when you hit that point, you just, I think that's the point to be at, and you have to kind of get comfortable that you're going to be saying something different to what they're expecting.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is that you're not uncomfortable saying no, or
If you
pushing
have-
back,
yeah.
but you kind of have to be because that is your
Yeah.
job.
That's right.
But it feels like a lot of your strategy is to develop those relationships with
That's right.
people, so that
Absolutely.
you can get your point across effectively. How do you do that when the people that you're trying to convince are in a different
Jurisdiction
jurisdiction?
and completely culturally different. Like,
Yeah.
you guys have worked with Singaporean, culturally, it's very different to the Dutch. We're very different to the US. And I think, again, it's not not bulldozing. Like, I like to use that word because I think sometimes lawyers can bulldoze and, well, this is the way, this is how it is, this is the reality. But it's delivering that message in a way that is very objective. Like, you take that subjective nature out of it. It's very objective. Sometimes you need external counsel to back you up to give that advice into the mothership or to wherever it's going. But ultimately, if you don't have those relationships, it's not gonna land.
Yeah. I apologize for saying mothership. 'Cause
Yeah,
now we
it's
all sound like aliens.
It's like sci-fi.
And speaking about sci-fi, like, we can't have a conversation without bringing up AI. Nice segue, thank you. I mean, it's obviously changing. It will, no doubt, change the way that we practice law. Interested to know, is it something that you have started playing with internally, in your businesses, Lauren?
It's really dealing with that at Goodyear at the moment. It's something that is come up at our regional legal team meetings, where we're looking at having an AI moment at each monthly legal team meeting. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to be gained from it, particularly for basic contract work. Like, for example, if you're looking at shutting down an entire division, to be able to use AI to review all of those contracts to say, yes, you can terminate with 90 days notice, that to be able to use AI for that sort of work that is lower risk work would be tremendous. And that's something that Goodyear is looking at investing in. But we're not quite there yet. I think a lot of companies are watching what other companies are doing and seeing how successful they are. But I think it's certainly where we're heading, but not for the type of work that we as General Counsel do.
No. Yeah.
You still need the strategic nature of it, the commercial experience, as well as all of our legal experience.
And
So-
do we think that, I mean, keen to hear from you, Reg, here. Do you feel like AI is going to shape the role of the GC into a particular way? It's going to push it more into being a strategic role, a bit more of, a power player, someone who is developing these relationships and integrated in the business and is also becoming more commercial?
Yeah, I think if it is implemented in a way that sort of takes away or reduces the work involved with that sort of low risk, low level sort of stuff, and gets, there's a lot of admin involved in what we do. So
Yeah.
on that level, I can sort of see the benefits of it. I'm not sure if it's there yet. I myself am only just sort of playing around with it at the moment, sort of very rough drafts, very crude summaries, that sort of thing, just to sort of get my mind into gear. So I don't think it's taking a lot of work away from me right now. But yeah, in the future, perhaps.
Do you see the potential in it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sashi?
Like back to the amount of workload that we all have, immense and growing. So using AI for that baseline, it's just love it, getting to that point. But the barrier, I think, is just when we're doing a lot of work, if the whole team's doing a lot of work, there is a investment that needs to happen to make sure the AI is right for you. The AI can actually, your IT teams agree that this is the tool. How do you integrate that into your current workflow? And so there's that investment. I think that's the barrier to the AI integration, like any software integration, getting that right and investing in the right AI. But if we do, for example, like a chat box that can deal with all the nonsense that we get, right? Like the same question every day, with some new person joins and you're like, oh my God, I'm on repeat, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that, that's an amazing world.
Just one that deals with all of your consumer warranty claims.
Yes,
Yeah.
or where's the NDA template? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
something that we're looking to do. Actually, just sort of having an in-house sort of search function that actually can sort of serve up the answers to policies and things like that. So it's using what we have already, but at least people can find it themselves as opposed to emailing legal. Yeah.
And then I mean, you're all playing. You've all used the word playing with AI. To some degree. What are some of the challenges? Well, what are some of the things that in-house counsel need to be mindful of when they start dabbling with AI?
Substitute for experience.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest red flag with it. And AI will learn, but it's going to take it time to learn, and it's going to make mistakes while it's learning. And we can't afford to rely on it and have it, turn into a mistake.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I really like what Reg is talking about, which is teaching it on your stuff only. Because then you're just more confident that it's your policies, it's your templates. And I think that's really great that you guys are doing that because it's really a product of the company and it's a company IP as well.
And then issues of inserting your IP into public AI platforms, issues of privacy and confidentiality and cybersecurity, all the rest of it. Yeah, totally. And have you put in place like an AI policy, guidelines, policies? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And look, a final question before we open up to, because we've got about 15 minutes left, before we open up to the audience. Thank you so much, by the way, for sharing all of your experiences. I think we covered a lot of topics. But yeah, keen to understand if there was just one, maybe two takeaways that you would like to leave the audience with, some practical tips for them. Lauren, did you want to? Oh, look, here's some we prepared earlier. Wow, just so natural. Like it.
I think just building on the comments earlier, I try to reframe rather than saying no where I can. And I think when you're at the table, trying to put lots of options on the table means that it's not necessarily a no, it's that option 2 is lower risk. It may have slightly less reward than option 1, but the risk is considerably less. So long term, you're going to have more reward with this approach. So I try to avoid the no as much as I can, like anyone would do with children in the same sort of way. You're just reframing and refocusing. And I think building the relationships in the business, as you said, Sashi, that is key. And I think we don't often do it enough, which is to make the time and say, hey, let's go grab a coffee. Let's sit down and just have a talk. How are you going? How are you managing everything? What could the legal function do to help you more? And get feedback, because often we don't ask for feedback. And feedback is a really valuable tool. And I know it's got to make you a bit vulnerable to ask for it, but you're not going to improve unless you get that. So those sort of one-on-one meetings are really invaluable.
Reg?
Yeah, I think I would, definitely back everything that Lauren just said. Especially, I think, with those building the relationships internally, having started my initial role at CMRI during COVID, like my first 2 years were almost all remote. So yeah, sort of building up those relationships after having worked with people for so long, but sort of having that direct connection with them as well, and that way they know they can just come to you for like straight away, right at the beginning of the issue, rather than sort of just sort of coming in after the fact, and knowing that you've got their back as well,
Yeah.
rather than just sort of being the no police.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I liked the point that you made around alignment as well, like making sure you're really clear on the business's objectives and aligning your team's priorities. Yeah. Sash?
Two. One was something that's really helped me through my career, my journey, and that was really to have a mentor, like to pick a mentor that's like has 10 to 15 on you wherever you are in your career, even if that person's then retired, because there's been a lot of times, where it's been burnout and it's been serious, like, quite, with going so hard, and you don't see it, and you meet your mentor for a coffee and they see it and they're like, mate, you need to take a holiday, right? Like, and I think sometimes you just don't see that as lawyers because we're just used to the level of work that we're doing. So that's, for me, I think that's just really important wherever you are in your journey, whether you're, not yet GC or you are GC, doesn't matter. It's just always been important for me. The second thing I was just going to say was like just how you show up. I think that's just crucial. How you show up, how you speak to people, how you deliver your message, how you respect people, they will respect you. And so for me, it's really just being confident in your delivery, getting your gut feeling right. Your gut feeling's probably right, like 99% of the time. You might not deliver it just because of the atmosphere, but being confident to deliver it objectively, that's always been kind of go-tos for me. Not easy to always get that right, but in the back of your mind, if you're striving for that, I think that, you most of the time you get it right.
I love that. I love that a lot of the tips, a lot of what we've been talking about are these soft interpersonal skills, which are so important, and something that, for example, an AI bot is never going to be able to replace. It's just going to be impossible. I'm interested in the mentor point before we go to the audience, because I think a lot of people would hear that and think, okay, where do I get started with having a mentor? So yeah, what does that look like? How often do you meet up with them, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you guys who my mentor is.
Oh, you don't have to
tell you. He might have.
Oh
space.
yeah, has he got a business card? He or she got a business card?
So I met, I think, and I don't think it's specific for legal because I've, a lot of the different managers and CEOs I've spoken to, they've all had mentors. They've all had mentors through their journey. In my case, I met my mentor when I was a grad at Maddox, and he was special counsel. He's then moved on from Maddox to different roles, but we've always kept in touch, and we've always, had a coffee. Like, called me today, was like, let's catch up. And I think this that because like you might be going from role to role, you're surrounded by people that don't really know you and your history, and you're changing as an individual, your experience is changing, but that person's known you really from day zero. And I think, and as you go through your journey, you collect people that you just click with.
Yeah.
And I think they're the people that it's actually really easy in that sense. It's a person that you click with that's like got 10 years on you.
Yeah.
That's the person because they've gone through it all, right? Like they've
It's a
seen
shame
it.
we're the same age,
Oh,
Sash.
mate,
You'd
I
be a
know.
great mentor. Anyway, sorry. Oh, sorry, you continue. Bit awkward, people feeling uncomfortable.
You just outed me.
Well, look, thank you so much. A round of applause to our panelists. Thanks, Sash. So, I think, am I going? Yeah, I think maybe we could move on to Q&A. Yeah, so just opening up to you guys. I mean, that was obviously a great conversation. Lots of topics were raised. Is there any questions that you guys have for our panelists? Or general observations? Yeah, great. Thanks. Who wants to have that? Who wants to take that one? Sashi, oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think you got to wear your big girl pants. You know, right? Like back to what's the role we play. We are playing a role of advisory. So is the sales GM, right? He's like, look, like he's playing that role too. And we as a group look at the entire all the issues on the table and a decision's made. Sometimes it goes legal's way, sometimes it goes another way. And I think you just kind of swallow that up to that's the business process. You've advised the best you thought at that point in time. And then the other thing is also, you know, I'm sure you find this, like at that point in time, we knew the information we knew. 2 months later, we know different information. Decisions always can change. You've entered a contract, it can be terminated. There's just all options, right, on the table there. So I think I would advise that 100% you're never going to get it your way. That's not going to happen. Well, somebody's going to walk out of the room not as happy, you know, and watch Netflix and try to
Yeah.
forget about it. But
And what an and also a good learning opportunity for you. A couple of opportunities. Number one is maybe it's going to realign your view on risk. Maybe it's going to give you maybe after you've been in that role for a few years, the thing that you thought was really risky actually, you
Very
know
good
what?
point,
It's not that
Manny.
risky.
Yeah, very good
And that also just comes with experience, right? Having seen enough contracts or seen enough deals go well or badly. It could also be like, how could I have approached that conversation differently? Like, what's the information that I think could have swayed the people in the room one way or the other? And also, it teaches you a little bit more about the business's risk appetite, which is learning opportunity. It's good.
Their decision as well, and we can only influence that so much. And I think it's important to remember that it is their decision. And ultimately, if you're not comfortable with the decision making, then you've sort of got to move with your feet. If over a period of time you're not able to influence it enough to change it.
It's interesting, isn't it? So you're saying that if you're in an organization where you just feel like their risk appetite doesn't align with your values or what you're comfortable with, that you have the only real alternative there is to move with your feet.
Yeah, particularly if you think the action is actually unlawful. I think,
Oh, yeah.
I think then
Yes.
you've just got to draw the
Yeah.
line. But it just depends how far they're pushing it. And, if you're working for an IT-based company, you would expect they're going to be pushing boundaries a bit more than if you're in government, say. So I think when you're choosing who to work for, you need to bear in mind the type of approach that they're going to take and their likely risk appetite.
yeah, and like to add to that, like so if you've just started in a company where you're sitting around the table and it doesn't go your way, right? Like there's also this education gap I think that the management team might have where they don't realize what they're actually agreeing to. And then 6 months down the track, you've done training, you've had a few of these options, and you've also told them all to go to director's training, and the decision is different, right? So I think it's more like, okay, well, if like, what do I also need to do to make sure the management team is fully educated, that they're making an educated decision, because it might not be enough legal just saying, this is the recommendation. They need to go on their own journey as well.
Yeah. Does that help? Cool. Thanks, guys. Any other questions? Matthew?
Thanks, guys. It's a question expanding the legal team, and we kind of talked about it being a cost center and that we can't rationalize ourselves. But just wondering if you've had like specific conversations about bringing on new people and kind of how you went about that kind of discussion, whether that just were too busy or you had specific metrics, and if you guys use any sort of ticketing system for legal or it comes through email as kind of part of that.
Yeah, we had a ticketing system when I was working in the BAT marketing company. When I moved to manufacturing, it was just me, so that became redundant. But yeah, the ticketing system meant that the business were able to easily track the actual volume of legal work as well as the turnaround times. So we were able to use that to show that an additional headcount would reduce the turnaround times. And we were also able to see the areas of law where the requests were coming from. So for example, if there was a big spike in IT and we saw that continuing, it would make sense to bring on an IT lawyer, if it was IP or, what have you. So that sort of a tool was very helpful to validate the need for an additional headcount.
Yeah, so like a bit of a trick because obviously getting headcount's not easy. It adds to the cost center, and that's always difficult, especially in multinationals. It's not easy. They've got like another 200 lawyers to feed all over the place. One of the ways that it made it easier was looking at secondments or looking at short term off the books headcount. So you go get a 6 months lawyer, they're through their company, then it's just an invoice. But that 6 month lawyer suddenly has a whole JD of work, and then the business realizes, oh my god, how did we ever like get through without this lawyer? They get converted into a full time headcount. I'm sure like lots of people have used that tactic, but it just shows, and you realize not just the hypothetical benefit, it's a real benefit and an opportunity that otherwise would be missed if we're about to let go of the secondee lawyer.
Oh, Rich. Yeah. So
The great point about secondments, because before I came along, there was a secondee, part-time secondee. So I guess the business saw the value in having, dedicated IP person in. So that's where I came along. That was nice. And not to give any massive plug, but so in my
please
current
give me a
role-
massive plug.
Yeah. Yeah, looking at budgets and things like that, like it just made a little bit more sense for me to sort of opt into a desk extension model with LegalVision. That way I could get a whole wealth of experience and a whole heap of resources, rather than, pouring it all into like one extra person that may or may not come with the right skill set. So, yeah, for me, it just made sense at the right time.
Are you finding it difficult at the moment to find? I mean, I don't know whether you guys are trying to find resources at the moment, but are you finding it difficult in this labor market to attract and retain talent?
We're not currently recruiting, but where there is a disconnect is that for us as a multinational, the grading is often done, in the US or in the region. And often the grading, when it applies to Australia, means the salary is actually just not in line with market.
Yeah.
So that is one challenge that we're having, and I think there's just a lack of understanding of the specific skill sets that are needed in the AU market and the remuneration that is warranted in this market as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree, because I think that like 5+ year lawyer is really hard to pick at the right remuneration, at the right budget. So yes, I think the market's tough. I was having a chat to somebody from London. They said the London market's fantastic. So I don't.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Sydney market's really tough.
Yeah. And that's definitely what we're hearing as well from our other in-house clients. Yeah. Any other questions, Joe?
Maybe a quick one. What I've observed, I guess, from a lot of in-house counsel and what I've heard from the panelists tonight, I guess, is that very much a blend of like big projects that move organizations forward, hopefully, and then a lot of daily fires. I guess I'd be interested to know from the panel if there are any practices or tools that you can share that helped move you to that kind of more proactive, you're as power players and senior, legal leaders in the business. Your job also, I guess, relies on you being that proactive, and I've observed that being like a really hard tension. So I'd be keen if you have any practices or tools that you can share that kind of help you get to that proactive stage.
I guess I set up just simple things like setting up regular meetings with the different business like groups or leaders, just so I know what's coming down the pipeline sort of straight away, rather than being hit a problem sort of after the fact. It helps me manage my time better as well, if I've got a better visibility of what's sort of coming through.
So you go out of your way to focus on the high value, high critical jobs, and then try and as best you can take away the low risk, low value.
Especially if they're like, sort of key business units that I know are sort of always going to be busy or have high value, high critical work.
Yes.
That way I can sort of funnel resources towards those guys.
Yeah, great. Lauren?
I'm actually that is a challenge for me at the moment, because we've recently announced that we're selling our Dunlop brand. and that's a huge project. So I was already flat out with just regular BAU, and my aviation hat. And it is challenging then, because when you get to the point where you just have so much work on, it's hard then to add the value. So that's where you've got to look at your budget and go, okay, is there work here that doesn't need me personally to do it, that I can outsource to free up some capacity for me to focus on the more strategic work? And I really love the monthly retainer here, because that really helps me track my budget, and that way I know exactly what I've got left to spend. So that's been really helpful for me. But yeah, certainly when you get projects, you've got to sort of take that time to just sit back and reflect on, what's urgent, what's not, what's strategic, what's not, and work out where you are going to add the value to the business.
Yeah. The prioritization, pipeline management, delegation. What do you reckon, Sash?
Especially at Philips, because I was the first counsel into Philips, so they're like
I know that.
there
Wow.
were like 900 people, and I was like,
Wow.
and I was like, I don't know, 5 years in. Or something. So I think that was a real like learning point for me. There was so much work, and as I matured in the role, it got to a point where organic growth was out of control. They all knew there was a lawyer, and that was just suddenly everything that they could do by themselves, like they needed legal. But it then really got to a point where we ran, and Philips being like kind of like a Toyota, they had a lean program running through the business on all lots of other things. We took the opportunity in the legal department to run a lean program through the legal department, where we were looking at, look, what are we getting? Because like I walked into a meeting once, and like the head of ops was like having a real crack at legal, and I just happened to walk in at that time, and they were like, everything's getting so delayed. And so we could tell that the organic growth was just too much for legal to handle, but we didn't have the headcount. We had 3 or 4 lawyers in the team. And so what we did was we did this whole roundtable with the lean program. We had all of our stakeholders. We talked about, well, what are prioritize, like how do we prioritize this work? We've got all of this work sitting in marketing, sales work that we could actually identify was what we called a priority 2 work. And then we would able to then pick out, actually these things are priority 1 work. This is the stuff like Lauren's talking about, the big projects, their big revenue or their big risk. How are we going to resource these big projects? With what resources and what timeframes do we manage these things? Those things continue to come into our email box. All the things that were P2, we looked at, well, what resources can we use? LV was one of the resources that we used for a lot of our P2s. We also put a tool in place to get our P2s off our emails. But I think that kind of comes down to being really clear on your P1s and P2 work. It can't all get mixed up in your inbox. It gets really confusing. And then like continuing to drive that message into the business and like talking the same language with the business. Yeah, sorry, we think this is the P2 work. And we just need you to understand. But what that means is the time frame is going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We can't turn this for you around in 5 days with the structure we currently have.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation.
Yeah. And just quickly, I know we're running out of time. What do you mean by a lean program? Is that like your Kaizen? Is that when you did your Kaizen? Yeah,
that
I
was it.
remember.
Do you remember?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah,
it was fun.
I know.
Do you want to explain what a Kaizen is?
Yeah. So it's basically like a Japanese word for leaning out your workload. Like how do you really look at your workload in a way that you literally flowchart all the points of entry into your legal team, all the pieces of work, who is it coming from, who are your key stakeholders, how do you really re-establish and get control back as to your workflow. And I think you can't do it straight off the bat in your first 12 months because you're still like
No, you need
drowning
to
and trying to
understand
figure
it
out
all.
what the hell
Yeah,
you're doing.
exactly.
And
You
I
don't know
think-
what the
yeah.
pain points are yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then it's at a certain maturity point where you then approach that. But I don't think it's like you do one Kaizen and you forget about it. It is continuous improvement.
Well, that's it. It's 1%. It's like improving it 1% every day,
version
right?
control,
That's
version control.
And
yeah.
Toyota, it was a Toyota initiative, right? It's like everyone's involved in innovation. Love it. So good.
That actually adopt the Kaizen approach.
Mm.
Like when you go into nearly everyone's house, they'll have a drawer with knives, forks, and spoons, right? And that's the essence of what Kaizen is. but you don't often hear of legal teams doing it. It's sort of generally applied more to manufacturing with
Yes.
Lean, Six Sigma. So I think that's really
And
impressive.
That's right, and it was really driven by my CEO, who was at the time, before his Australia CEO role, he was head of change management. So he came in and he's like, you know what, Sashi, we should do a Kaizen on legal, and I was like, fantastic, let's do it, right? So I think it's just also having buy-in from your CEO, like get them on board, explain to them all the reasons why, and you suddenly probably get another headcount
Hmm.
because Kaizen said you needed another headcount.
Yeah. Guys, I feel like we should have our own podcast. Like, we're about 10 minutes late, so we probably have to wrap it up. Another round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. Sashi, Reg, and Lauren. A bit of a plug from us. So we do have a CPD, an in-house counsel CPD day. So it's a full day. We're talking topics on, so it's a bit on AI. Lauren's giving a chat on privacy. Phoebe's giving, you're giving the AI and ethics, legal ethics chat. We're talking corporate governance, employment. So if you're interested, please come along. You can basically get all of your sort of mandatory, a lot of your mandatory CPD points on that day. So yeah, just take a photo of that QR code. I'd be remiss without saying, giving a plug. I mean, you guys did a fantastic job at plugging our desk extension product. This is our membership product, which is designed for in-house legal teams. So under this subscription offering, we can assist with all of your business as usual legal needs. For a fixed monthly fee. There's no lock-in contracts. The idea is that you're getting really good quality lawyers at a really affordable price, and also in this environment where we're constantly we're trying to do more with less. This is a fantastic alternative to adding additional headcount. So for a fraction of the cost of adding headcount, you get access to all of our lawyers. We've got 150 across Australia, New Zealand, the UK, across all of our practice areas. So look, it's a fantastic solution. Do you guys all agree? I think you have to. So if you're interested in having a chat, you can either talk to me or Ali. Put your hand up, Ali. So we handle a lot of the enterprise sales. Oh, Mark is over there. So yeah, you can have a chat with us either tonight, or we can arrange a coffee catch up and we can chat. But that's all. Oh, by the way, Q&A is over. But look, thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much to our panelists. And please stick around for a couple of drinks and we can continue the chat. Thank you.